explorers. During Apollo, we were on national TV literally every day because we were doing something visible that Americans could see and they could feel and say, look what we are doing. And I believe Artemis is going to come up and say, look what we are capable of and what we are doing now.
Artemis will stand on the shoulders of Apollo. They're going to have the eyes of the world trail.
The science of a space flight is one that will continue to inspire. Going to the moon generates technology, more communications, more computer technology, more sophistication in manufacturing that help us in everyday life.
We have a generation that is ready, a generation with that technology, a generation with the education. Artemis represents the future in space. It is our next big step, and it is time to take it.
If you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we are showing you a live look of another visitor center. This is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Wow, take a look at all of those people who are there hoping to watch the launch today. You know, this is the visitor center for the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. That center in contributing to the Artemis program. So I'm not surprised that there are a bunch of people there watching. All right, so now we're going to take a go back to Leah Martin over at Banana Creek. Again, that's right outside of our visitor center, and she's with some other folks who came out to watch today's launch.
Yeah, you know, Megan, we talked about this being America's rocket, right? Every state in the United States has contributed to this rocket, so it should be no surprise that we have people from all over the country joining us here tonight. I'm actually joined by some friends of ours who are joining us from Georgia and Utah. What does it mean to be here tonight to see tonight's launch?
I think it's amazing. I know that tons of people from all over the United States have helped build the rockets and are here tonight. So it's awesome to know that we all have a little bit of personal ties to the rocket.
And go ahead.
No, I'm just excited to be here because I've been a fan of space travel and going to the moon and back. And I'm glad to see it's happening again later in life.
And you were actually telling me a little in those years following those first launches, and now here, how does it feel to be watching the sister program launch and seeing at the beginning?
Look at the goosebumps. That tells it all right here. I'm totally thrilled to be here.
Now, and you were actually telling me that you have a personal connection to this rocket as well. You know, some people who have worked on it. What do you think it feels like being here? How does it feel for you to see something that's the culmination of so many years of hard work?
Yeah, I think it's crazy when you think about how long it takes and stuff. Like, I wasn't even born last time people tried to get to the moon. So it's awesome. I think it's so exciting, and I cannot wait.
And we have a ton of people who are working tonight still on call, and so we just wanted to tell them words of encouragement. What more do you have to say?
Oh, I hope it goes tonight.
Megan, back to you.
Go Artemis.
Woo!
Go Artemis. Yes, I love that. And again, I just love these drone shots that we're showing of all the people who are here ready, hoping, anticipating launch today. So now let's head back over to Dan. So Dan is in the Apollo Saturn V Center, which is right next to this crowd that you're seeing here. He's inside there, and he's got interactive, state-of-the-art tool we're calling the Moonboard.
That's right, Megan and everybody. Welcome back to the Moonboard. So just to recap, SLS out on the pad, on the mobile launcher. Daryl's been walking you through all of the tanking, all of the preparation. We had that hydrogen leak that was in the base of the mobile service structure here. That's been remedied. We haven't had any issue with those tail umbilicals that we were tracking so closely back in August and September. So everything looking really good with SLS. Just to recap, most powerful rocket we have ever built. It's propelled by 2 solid rocket boosters and 4 engines on this core stage. Now these solid rocket boosters are going to be firing for the first roughly 2 minutes of the flight, a little more than 2 minutes. And we call them solids because of the type of propellant in there. If you forgot it already, it's aluminum powder, ammonium perchlorate, and polybutadiene are extremely stable. They're very reliable, but once you ignite them, they're going to keep burning. You can't really throttle them up and down like you can with liquid fueled engines. You can throttle just based off of the distribution. So you basically put more propellant in some areas and less in others as you're trying to really throttle the rocket down, which we do as we go through things like max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. And just a reminder, as these things are firing, they can steer, they can gimbal. The bottom part here, gimbal just means you can really direct, and they're providing 90% of the steering as SLS is making the flight uphill, and more than with those 2 firing at the same time. Attached to this is the core stage, 212 feet tall, the largest single stage we've ever constructed. It's been through the green run test, a lot of preparation for this flight today, and it is propelled by these 4 RS-25 engines. Now these are liquid fueled rocket engines, so you have a fuel, and you could kind of like the gas in your car, you can go faster or a little bit slower. So these throttle up to 104% of their rated thrust at the time of liftoff. We throttle them down as we go through max Qs, the maximum amount of pressure on SLS on the way uphill, and then throttle them back up until they've consumed all of their propellants. And they're consuming that propellant at more than 1,500 gallons a second. That is just an astronomical amount of fuel that's running through these engines to produce that thrust. Each of these up to 500,000 pounds each during their operation. And of all the different components, we've got this engine block section down here. You have all of the associated plumbing, everything to feed those propellants down to these engines. You also have these 2, and that's where we actually tank the SLS rocket. So a lot of focus on those in the previous attempts. They've cooperated spectacularly so far today, and we've been able to fully tank this core stage. And reminder, you have a fuel, about 500,000 gallons right here of liquid hydrogen, and then an oxidizer. You need those 2 together, and then an ignition source. That's what gives you your reaction, your thrust, your basically controlled explosion that then comes out of those rocket engines. So fully tanked, these are cryogenic fuels, hundreds of degrees below zero. So we've got a spray-on insulation across the entire vehicle as it's sitting out there in the Florida air. It's a little bit warm tonight, but we need to keep those hundreds of degrees below zero. It takes a lot of energy to do that. So the less you have to use to keep them cold, the better, which is why we have that insulation. So we're going to be seeing SLS take flight for the first time tonight as we clear all of those final issues. Again, this is going to be one heck of a show when this thing launches into the night sky. So with that, send it back over to you, Megan.
If you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center for live launch coverage of Artemis 1. I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. It's been great having you these past 2 hours.
It's been so awesome to be here for this historic launch tonight.
So right now we are awaiting new T0. The launch team had to work through some issues, and they're doing a great job at working through those issues. So now we're just waiting to see a new T0, since we had been aiming for the top of the launch window, which opened does open at 1:04 a.m. Eastern time. Now today is a big deal. Apollo 17 in 1972 was the last time humans stepped foot on the moon. That the rocket you see right there behind us, illuminated in the darkness there, is the first step back towards getting us to the moon. Now, Artemis 1 is the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration systems. That's the ground systems here at Kennedy Space Center, the Space Launch System, or SLS rocket, and the Orion spacecraft. We will send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft farther beyond the moon than any of the Apollo missions before it. For Artemis 2, Orion will have astronauts on board as it orbits the moon. Then future Artemis missions will land the first woman and first person of color on the surface of the moon. So Kayla, why do we want to go back to the moon?
The moon's a super interesting place to study. It can tell us a lot about the Earth, its own formation, but also more about our solar system. And we also want to return, this time in an international partnership, for a permanent program to travel onto Mars.
Mm-hmm. And what about for you? I mean, you have the possibility of for those future missions, because the Artemis program can choose from any of you guys, any of the NASA astronauts.
It's a crazy time to be a NASA astronaut and even imagine that that could be real. I think we're all just honored to be a part of the team that's doing this. We're just a small representation of all of the amazing human beings around the world that it takes to do something as audacious as returning to the moon, learning what we need to go onto Mars. So we're just all excited to support the program in any way we can. But of course, a ride to the moon would be incredible. So
Yeah.
I think we're all just dreaming about those moonwalks.
Now, since Artemis 1 is setting the stage for those future crewed missions, is there anything in particular about